The road vanished beneath a curtain of dust. Her boots were city-worn and blistered, her fingers wrapped in bandages made from a torn slip. Me, Whitlock, didn't look back, not when the sign for Wickenburg disappeared behind her. Not when her wedding ring, slick with blood from where she'd pried it off, glinted for a second in the Arizona dirt and was lost. She hadn't planned for this. No money, no destination, no name that felt safe to say aloud. But after 5 years of choking on the silence her husband gave her, and 2 nights of bleeding in secret, planning had given way to pure instinct. She walked until the sky opened into a sprawl of red mesas and the world thinned out. Her past was a shadow behind her, and the future was a lie she hadn't yet told. By the third night she couldn't feel her feet. Her vision curled at the edges. She passed a wooden gate marked with iron symbols, half-burned, unreadable, and a stretch of land that seemed too wide to belong to anyone. But the cattle fence ran sure and strong across the hill, and beyond it a house sat like a stone settled deep into the earth. She fainted before she reached the porch. She woke to the scent of leather and sage. Her head rested on something warm, a dog maybe. A heavy wool blanket wrapped around her body, and the fire crackled steady nearby. She didn't open her eyes at first, not until the door creaked. The man who stepped inside had eyes like storms caught in dusk. Gray but not dull, he said nothing, just crossed the floor with a bowl and crouched by her side. "You got a name?" he asked after a moment, voice low and slow as a rifle being cocked. Me blinked, her throat burned when she tried to speak. "Don't have to tell me," he said. He set the bowl down. "You're safe here, that's all you need for now." She watched him in the flickering light. Calloused hands, sleeves rolled to elbows, a scar that curved up from his jaw like a stray lash. He wasn't young, but he moved like someone who knew his bones and could still break another man with them. "How long can I stay?" she rasped. "As long as you don't bring trouble," he said, and something in the way he stood told her he knew trouble intimately. His name was Elias Boone, and the ranch was his. He had 3 ranch hands who kept their distance, and a border collie named Nellie who curled beside me like she'd chosen her. The house was old, built before the war, with thick walls that kept the heat in and the noise out. It sat on 1,000 acres of scrubland and memory, and me could feel the weight of it in the floorboards. The first week she didn't ask questions. She helped where she could, folded linens, gathered eggs, kept to herself. Her bruises faded from purple to yellow, then vanished. But some things stayed sore, deeper than skin. Elias never asked where she came from. He offered her chores, pay in coins and meat, and one locked door at the end of the hall that he told her not to worry about. The hands called her the quiet one when they didn't think she was listening. That was fine, better quiet than missing. One morning she woke to the sound of hooves. A stranger had arrived, suit and mustache, clean boots that didn't belong on a ranch. Me stayed in the pantry, heart pounding against the wooden shelves, listening. You seen a woman, late 20s, maybe 30, brown hair, might be hurt. The voice was clipped, too sure. Plenty women look like that, Elias said. She's mine. I mean, she's my wife. You lose her? Elias asked. The man didn't answer. Me held her breath as his boots scraped closer to the pantry. You law, Elias said, not moving. The man hesitated. I got rights. I didn't ask that. Me pressed her palm over her mouth. You think I'd taken a man's wife without knowing his name, his sins, his smell on her? The stranger didn't answer. He left by sunset. That night, Elias brought me a knife. You don't owe me gratitude, he said. But you stay here, you pull your weight, and you keep that close. Ain't all trouble comes with a face. Me took the blade. Her hands shook, but not with fear. For the first time in months, it felt like she had a spine. Spring turned the hills green for 3 brief weeks. Me took to rising early, her fingers in the soil before the sun crested the butte. She learned to shoot from Elias' oldest hand, a woman called Rebah who wore a wide-brimmed hat and smoked cheroots like they were medicine. Me kept to her silence, but her eyes watched everything. The way Elias limped when the cold came, how he sometimes sat by the locked room for hours without moving. By summer, me could saddle a horse, stitch a wound, and kill a rattlesnake without flinching. But she still dreamed of hands around her throat. One night, thunder cracked overhead. Me stood in the doorway and let the rain hit her face. Elias stepped beside her, quiet. "You think he'll come back?" she asked, not looking at him. "Not if he knows what's good for him. And if he does, then he'll learn." Me didn't flinch when Elias' fingers brushed her shoulder. She didn't lean into it, either, but the contact sat with her like a secret. Something tender, something earned. The ranch was not a paradise. The work was hard, and the past lived in every nail. But it was hers now, too, not by blood or name, but by grit. She was no longer me Whitlock, the senator's wife. Not anymore. Out here she was just me, and she was not afraid. Elias didn't speak of the past, and me didn't ask. But every now and then, something cracked through the quiet. An old photograph fallen from a book, a rifle polished too often for a man who claimed peace, or the way he watched the edge of the property as if waiting for ghosts. The ranch lived in cycles, calving, branding, flood, drought. Me bent to each rhythm without complaint. She slept little, dreamt less. It was in the stillness between chores that her mind stirred most, the quiet moments in the barn or when her hands were deep in water, scrubbing until her skin wrinkled. One such day she found the locked door open. She didn't mean to go in. The wind had pushed it wide, just a little enough to show the corner of a bed, unmade, dusty. A child's boot stood beneath the window. A doll slumped on the shelf with one glass eye missing. She stepped in slow, breath-catching. There were drawings on the wall, horses, stick figures, suns with thick rays. A name was etched into the wooden bed frame, Lee, burned in with a nail. She backed out before Elias found her, but that night he stood on the porch long after dark, staring toward the hills. He didn't speak when she joined him, just passed her his flask. "She was 7, he said finally, took sick. Her mother left before she could bury her." Me didn't respond. He wasn't asking for sympathy. He was naming the wound. "I didn't mean to see it," she said. "I know." He drank deep. "Doesn't make it hurt less." The next morning, me hung her own washing beside his. She hadn't done that with anyone before. Elias noticed, but didn't comment. Mid-July brought heat like punishment. One of the water lines cracked, and Elias rode out to fix it himself. He came back with blood on his shirt and a bite low on his leg. Rattler got him through the boot. Rebab burned the wound clean while me held him down. He didn't scream, but he passed out twice. That night me sat by his bed. The others stayed away, whispering. The ranch couldn't run without him. "You ain't meant to watch me this way," Elias said through cracked lips. "I wasn't meant for a lot of things," she replied. "Yet here I am." His fever broke 3 days later, but he didn't return to work. He watched from the porch, carved wood with a pocket knife, spoke little. So me took charge. She gave orders, drove the cattle to the east pasture, bargained with the supplier in town for feed. When one of the hands made a crude joke, she broke his nose with the butt of her rifle. He left the next morning without collecting pay. The ranch held its breath, then it shifted, accepted her. Elias watched her differently after that, not as a guest, not as a woman to be shielded, as someone who had proven herself on his land. When the first autumn frost came, he handed her a silver spur. "You earned it," he said. She didn't ask what that meant, just took it and wore it without ceremony. One night she found him sitting by the creek where the cottonwoods bent low. He held a letter. It was creased, handled too many times. "She's dead," he said. "Lee's mother died in Kansas, some drunk thing. I got word from her brother." Me sat beside him, the cold seeping through her skirts. She didn't ask if he mourned. She could see it in the way he held the letter, like something too light to anchor grief but too heavy to burn. "You hate her?" she asked. "I tried," he said. "But hate needs fuel. I ran out years ago." Me said nothing, just stared at the water. "My husband would kill me if he could," she said, not for the first time, but louder this time, more certain. "He'll try again." Elias looked at her, long and hard. "Then we make sure he doesn't get close enough." It wasn't a promise of violence, it was an oath of vigilance. A truth shared between two people who had lost too much to let the world take more. That winter, Me moved her things into the main bedroom, not because Elias asked, because it was cold and the wind clawed through the shutters at night, and she no longer flinched when she saw herself in the mirror. He never touched her without permission, never reached for her when she turned her face away. And slowly, over weeks, she stopped turning. They did not speak of love, they didn't need to. Love was in the saddle cinched tight for her before dawn. In the extra cup of coffee set beside her plate, in the way Elias rolled to face her in his sleep, not touching, just there, just breathing. One day, Me asked him what he thought heaven looked like. He just shrugged. "Maybe it's quiet. Maybe no one wants anything from you." She smiled. "Then maybe I'm already there." But peace never lasts. In the spring, a telegram came to town. The sheriff rode out to the ranch, face drawn. "Man in Phoenix asking about a missing wife," he told Elias. "Describes her right down to the scar on her neck, said he's coming this way." Me didn't run. She stood on the porch, the same porch where she'd first collapsed, and sharpened her blade. Her hands were steady. Elias came beside her holding a shotgun. "This time," she said, "I don't need someone to save me." Elias didn't answer, just chambered around. The sky above them split with the cry of hawks. In the distance, dust stirred on the road. The dust plume cut west across the flat like a wound refusing to scab. Me watched it narrow, hardening into the shape of a wagon, black-covered, drawn by a mule with ribs like a washboard. A man rode beside it, not atop. He wasn't hurrying, that told her more than words. She stood with the rifle slung over her back, a knife on her hip. Her shoulders were square, boots planted wide in the dirt. Beside her, Elias didn't move. His eyes were hooded, not fearful, not yet. "He's alone," Elias said, finally. "For now," Me replied. The man stopped 100 yards off, called out with a hand raised as if that might sweeten the stink of violence that clung to him. "Me," he said, no last name, no apology. She didn't move. "You gonna talk to me, or make me yell your sins in front of strangers?" Elias stepped forward. "You're trespassing," he said. The man chuckled like it was all too much bother. "You the new one?" he asked. "She collect men now, is that how she runs?" "She runs fast," Elias said, "and hard, and for a reason." Me stepped down from the porch. Every eye on the ranch turned toward her. "Go back to Phoenix, Jack," she said, voice steady as the rustle of dry grass. "You walk any closer, you won't leave the same." Jack tilted his head. "You always were a little dramatic." She touched the hilt of the knife. "You always were a coward." Jack's eyes sharpened. For a second the charm slipped and the wolf showed his teeth. "You think this ends with you standing. That ranch can't save you." "It didn't save me," Me said. "I did." He moved then fast, but not fast enough. The flash of steel came from his hip, but the shot never landed. Elias fired first. Jack's hat flew off, split at the crown. The mule brayed and bolted. Jack staggered, eyes wide. Blood ran from his ear. "I'll be back," he gasped. Me stepped forward and aimed. "Not if I see you first." He ran. The sheriff came that night, called by the sound of a single bullet slicing through twilight. Elias told him what happened. The sheriff looked at me with a strange kind of respect and didn't ask for details. "You're still legally married?" he asked. Not anymore, me said. The sheriff nodded and spat into the dust. Well, if he comes back, it's trespass, or worse. You got every right to defend yours. Ours, she thought, not just mine. Ours. Me slept beside Elias that night but didn't close her eyes until near dawn. She knew it wasn't over. Jack had tasted something he couldn't swallow. Her defiance, her refusal, it would stay with him like a rot in the gut. Men like that didn't heal, they infected. The ranch braced, weeks passed, then months. Me dug deeper into the land. Planted squash and beans, learned to trap coyotes, kept a pistol under her pillow. She read Elias' books when sleep wouldn't come, dusty Civil War volumes, journals by dying outlaws, maps from before the territory had a name. Elias taught her how to weld. You planning something? He asked one evening, eyebrows raised. I'm surviving, she said. He didn't smile, but his eyes warmed. Then we do it together. They built a smokehouse in spring. Me learned to salt meat, to cure it with herbs from the slope where the wild thyme grew. She stopped jumping at loud noises. She started laughing again, but only in private, soft bursts that startled her at first. One day, Elias took her to the canyon. He never brought anyone else. They rode early, before heat stitched the sky. The canyon opened like a secret, red walls carved by time, not tools. He led her to a spot where the wind sang through a crevice, and there he told her about the war. How his brother died in Tennessee, how the blood never washed out of his uniform, how he couldn't go home because there was no home left. Then I found this land, he said, and I stayed. She took his hand and squeezed. I know that feeling, she said. Staying because leaving means letting go of the one thing that didn't lie. They rode back at dusk, silent but not alone. Later that week she found a letter buried in one of Elias' drawers, addressed to her, unsent. He'd written it after that first winter. The words were plain but true. If you ever want to go, I won't stop you. But know this ranch is yours if you want it. You earned it, same as I did. And I won't forget how you looked that first night, half dead, still proud. She didn't mention the letter. She just built more fence, mended more cloth. Started humming to herself in the barn, but the peace grew heavy, like air before a storm. The ranch dog started barking at nothing, long howls at midnight. Someone left a boot print by the riverbank, too fresh. Me didn't tell Elias. Not yet, not until she was sure. That night she sat in the barn and sharpened her knives. When she looked at her reflection in the blade, she didn't see a wife. She saw a survivor, and survivors don't run twice. The print by the river wasn't made by a ranch boot. Too clean at the heel, too shallow in the mud for anyone used to working the land. Me found it early, just as light cracked through the cottonwoods. She knelt beside it, fingertips brushing the edge. A single boot print, but fresh, directionless, like whoever left it didn't want to be tracked, just seen. She stood slowly, scanning the trees. No birds, no breeze. Just a stillness that didn't belong. At breakfast, she told Elias. He set down his coffee and didn't speak, just stared through the wall like it was transparent. Rabat rode out an hour later with a rifle strapped to her back. She circled the northern ridge, came back by noon. No tracks going east, she said, but something spooked the horses in the lower pasture. Fence was cut clean, wire sliced like a razor. Me felt it then, not just a threat, but a hunt. Slow, patient, personal. Jack hadn't run, he'd retreated. That night Elias walked the perimeter twice. Me didn't sleep. She sat by the stove with her boots on and the shotgun across her lap. At dawn, they found the mule. It was hers, the one Jack had ridden in on months ago. Starved, trembling, spine bent like a broken yoke. A message carved into its flank with a knife. Wife. Me turned away before Elias could see her expression. It wasn't fear. It was fury. He was playing with her, making the land bleed around her before aiming for the heart. She rode into town with Rabat that afternoon. They bought more ammunition, extra locks, a second lantern. Me visited the blacksmith alone, asked about a particular length of chain and a hammer-weight padlock. She didn't explain. The blacksmith didn't ask. On the ride back, Rebath finally spoke. You sure you're ready? For what? To kill the man who made you this. Me didn't answer at first. She gripped the reins, felt the worn leather bite back. I don't think he made me, she said. I think he just revealed what was already there. When they got home, Elias had built a second barricade behind the main gate. Pine timbers stacked with wire, old wagon wheels jammed at the corners for cover. Me helped him reinforce the doors with iron nails. The ranch turned into a fortress. The hands stopped sleeping in the bunkhouse. They took turns on watch, but days passed, then weeks, no sign. Me started hearing things in the night. A soft cough behind the barn, a laugh cut off too quick. She never found footprints, no broken twigs, just the sense of something out there waiting. Then one morning the well ran dry. Elias and me rode out, followed the pipe a mile uphill. Found the source sabotaged, rocks shoved into the basin, metal punctured in two places with a thin blade. Close, Elias said, scanning the ridge. Me knelt beside the basin. Her fingers came away red, blood mixed with the water, not animal, too thin, recent. Jack was bleeding. That meant he was either careless or getting desperate. That night, Elias pulled a small wooden box from under the floorboards. Inside were 3 revolvers, cleaned but worn, and a set of silver bullets. Me picked one up. You believe in monsters? Elias shrugged, not the kind with fangs. She chose the shortest-barreled gun and tucked it into her waistband. They set traps that week. Steel snares along the creek, sharpened stakes beneath the windows, tripwires strung near the horses. But it was me's idea to bait him. She took Elias' coat, smeared it with blood from a rabbit, and hung it from the fence where Jack would see it. Then she waded out in the brush, rifle across her lap, spine against a rock. The wind shifted just before dusk. She smelled him before she saw him. He came limping through the brush like a ghost walking on splinters. Face gaunt, clothes torn, but the eyes were sharp, too sharp for a dying man. He saw the coat and smiled. Then he turned fast toward where me crouched. You still think you're hard, he called, voice cracking like ice on a creek. You still think you can survive without me. She didn't answer, just raised her rifle. You won't shoot, he said, because you remember what I was. You loved me once. No, she said, and her voice didn't shake. I feared you. That's not the same. He took a step forward. The trap snapped. Steel jaws clamped onto his ankle. He screamed, went down hard. Me stood, walked toward him with the rifle lowered but ready. Jack clawed at the trap. Blood spurted between his fingers. You set me up, he gasped. No, she said, you walked into it. He looked up then, eyes wide and wild. You ain't the woman I married. You're right, she said. She died the first time you hit her. Behind her, Elias emerged from the dark, shotgun cradled. Jack's mouth opened. No words came. Let him die slow, Elias said. Me stared down at the man who once owned her, who branded her silence with bruises, who dragged her back with words and knives. She pulled her blade, no sound but wind. When it was done, she sat in the dirt, breathing hard, not shaking, not crying. Elias knelt beside her, didn't touch her, just waited. You okay? He asked finally. She nodded. I think so. He looked at the blood, the trap, the sky overhead. You sure? She turned to him, met his eyes. I'm not his wife anymore, she said. I'm mine. They buried Jack at the far edge of the property, in a patch of hardpan where nothing grew. No marker, no prayer. Elias dug the grave while me stood back, watching the sun rise behind the distant ridgeline. When the last shovelful hit the earth, she stepped forward and packed the dirt with the heel of her boot. No ceremony, no words. You don't have to stay, Elias said later, his voice low. I know, she replied. The days after were thick with silence. Not tension, but something heavier, like the land itself had taken a breath and didn't know what to do with it. Me returned to work before the others did. She milked the goats, repaired the fence posts along the southern edge, took inventory of the pantry. Reba gave her space. The hands moved quieter around her, no longer out of pity but respect. Me wasn't a shadow anymore. She was a presence. The first storm came early that year. Rain swept in sideways, the sky black with churned ink. Elias found her out in the corral, dragging buckets. You trying to drown? He asked. Trying to finish, she said. Not used to leaving things half done. He took a bucket without asking and walked beside her. That night they watched the lightning split the mesa from the safety of the porch. She leaned into him for warmth, and this time he reached for her hand and held it. You still thinking about leaving? He asked. Me shook her head. I was always running to something, she said, just didn't know it. The ranch settled, not into ease but into rhythm. Me grew leaner, her shoulders strong. Her face browned in the sun, and her hands became tools as much as limbs. She learned to predict storms by scent, to ride without stirrups, to read a man's intention in the way he touched his hat brim. The townsfolk began to notice her, too. They stopped calling her the girl Elias took in. They started calling her the woman with the quiet rifle. She became a name in the mouths of traders and drifters, someone not to be crossed, someone who kept her land and bled for it. One afternoon, a boy rode up from the east, barefoot, no older than 12, with hair like dirty straw and a black eye swollen shut. He collapsed off his horse before they reached the gate. Me carried him inside, cradled him like she'd once done for herself. The boy woke gasping, asking for his sister. Said they'd run from a man with fists and fire in his teeth. Said the girl was hiding downriver, waiting for him to come back with help. Me didn't hesitate. She saddled her mare, checked her pistol, and rode. Elias followed, no words needed. They found the girl that night, curled beneath a cottonwood, face bruised and dress torn. Me wrapped her in her coat and held her tight. The man who hurt them never saw the dawn. No one in town asked where he'd gone. Me took the siblings in. Reba helped raise them, taught the boy how to tend the barn and the girl how to whistle through her teeth. Me didn't speak of her own scars, but when the girl flinched at thunder, she held her and whispered truths into her hair. You're not weak, she said. You're just waiting to become dangerous. The girl believed her, and slowly, me saw herself in the girl's stubborn spine and the boy's silent, watchful eyes. Elias came to her one night as she sat by the fire, the children asleep in the loft. He placed something in her lap, a deed, the ranch's title signed over to her. She looked up, stunned. You're giving it away. No, he said. I'm giving it a future. Me stared into the fire, her throat tightened, but she didn't cry. This place saved me, she said. No, Elias replied. You saved yourself. The ranch just held still long enough for you to find out. He kissed her then, not out of pity or protection, but because she wanted it. They didn't marry, no papers, no preacher. But the ranch whispered their vows every time the wind swept the grass and the gates creaked open. Me never changed her name. She didn't need to. She'd already buried the one that didn't fit. By the time the snow reached the canyon rim, me had grown used to the sound of children laughing. It was strange at first, too soft, too alive for a place where silence had always ruled. But the boy, Caleb, had taken to ranch life like a seed in good soil, and his sister, Elsie, though quiet, was never far from me's side. She followed her through the chores, copying her movements, asking nothing but learning everything. Me taught her how to shoot, not with fanfare or encouragement, just steady instruction in the dry field behind the barn. They used tin cans at first, then apples, then nothing but wind. She's got your eyes, Rabah said one morning, nodding toward the girl. Me didn't answer, didn't need to. Spring thawed the ground hard and fast. Rivers swelled and the hills bloomed sudden, short-lived. Me took the children into town for new boots, and when the shopkeeper called her Mrs. Boone, she didn't correct him. Elias had heard the name once and raised an eyebrow. She shrugged. Let them call me what they want. I know who I am. They lived without fear now, but not without caution. Me still checked the locks before bed, still slept with a blade tucked under the mattress. Not because Jack might return, he wouldn't, but because safety was a myth, and she no longer believed in myths. Late one evening, a rider arrived from the south, thin, rag-worn, and coughing blood. Me met him at the gate with her rifle loose in hand. He held up a letter, sealed in wax, stamped with an unfamiliar crest. From Yuma, he rasped. Some judge wants your word on a matter about a man found dead near the Gila River. Woman claims he was her husband, says you might know something. Me read the letter by lamplight. It was Jack's first wife. A name she'd never heard, tied to a ghost she hadn't known existed. The woman claimed he'd hurt her too, claimed he left her broken in ways the law had no names for. Now she wanted to bury him. Needed someone, anyone, to vouch that he was the man they said he was. Me didn't hesitate. She rode south the next morning. Elias stayed with the children. Rabah rode beside me, as she always had when storms threatened. They found the woman in a crumbling adobe house, 3 miles from the Gila, thin, silver-haired, shoulders bent from years of flinching. You're her, the woman said, the last one. I'm the one who finished it, me said. The woman cried when me handed her the ring, not out of grief but relief, like some curse had finally lifted. Me stayed one night, then left at first light. The ride back was quiet. Rabah didn't press. Halfway home, they camped by an old trail marker. Me stared at the fire, thinking of names, of what it meant to reclaim something that had only ever been used against you. I don't regret it, she said suddenly. Good, Rabah replied. I'd be worried if you did. Back on the ranch, spring turned to early summer. The children grew taller. Caleb could rope a calf clean by the horn. Elsie had taken to wearing a small knife at her waist, just like me. When a traveling preacher passed through and asked if they were a family, me looked to Elias, then the children. Yes, she said, we are. Later she found an old trunk in the barn, one of Elias from before. Inside, tucked beneath canvas and books, was a photograph, faded, almost bleached out by time. A girl, maybe 7, smiling from the porch me now swept every day. Lee, the lost one, me left the photograph out that night. Not in a frame, not on display, just where Elias would find it. He didn't speak when he saw it, just nodded once. Then placed it in the center of the mantel, above the fire. Summer brought travelers, wanderers, rumors. A man came through whispering of lands to the north where gold still ran in creeks. Another told tales of war in far countries. Me listened, nodded, but never asked for details. She was done chasing fortune, done fleeing shadows. One night Elias asked her what she'd do if the ranch burned to ash. Start over, she said. With you, with them. It's not the land that made me strong, it's what I did on it. He kissed her with that same quiet certainty, like every moment between them was still being earned. And me believed for the first time that love wasn't weakness. It was choosing, over and over, to stay, to fight, to rebuild. The fire came in late August. No lightning, no accident. Just dry wind and flames rising fast from the eastern ridge. Me saw the smoke before the others, just a thin curl at first, then a black column twisting skyward like a curse escaping the earth. She was in the south pasture, checking the fencing. By the time she galloped back, the air already smelled of char. The sky turned orange and ash rained like snow. Elias didn't ask how it started. He gave orders, clear and sharp. Rabah led the cattle west. Caleb filled barrels. Me took Elsie by the hand and ran to the barn. They worked without speaking, buckets to the roof, blankets soaked and draped across windows. By sundown, flames licked the edge of the property. Not yet touching, but close enough to taste fear, Me tied her kerchief across her mouth. The girl stayed at her side, wide-eyed but steady. "What do we do?" Elsie asked. "We fight," Me said. "And if we lose, then we build again." The fire didn't break until morning, not until the sky cracked open and the wind turned on itself, driving the worst of it east. The ranch didn't burn, but the edge of the north field was lost. 3 calves, 2 sheds, and half the peach grove were gone. Smoke hung low for days, choking everything in silence. They buried what they had to, repaired what they could. Me spent that first morning walking the line of ash alone. Her boots sank into blackened soil. Nothing spoke, not even the birds. She stopped by the grave on the edge of the land, jacks, and spit once, not out of hatred anymore, just to mark it, to remind the dead that the living still chose. Rabah found her there an hour later. "You think it was him?" she asked. "No," Me said. "He's too dead to light matches, but someone like him maybe." Rabah nodded. A man he owed, or a man like him trying to send a message. Me didn't reply. The truth was, it didn't matter. Fire didn't need a name, only dry wood and silence. Back at the house, Elsie had drawn something, a sketch on the back of an old invoice. It showed the ranch, but bigger, rebuilt. A second barn, a new fence line. The words "ours" scrawled in the corner. Me put it on the wall. Weeks passed. The orchard began to green again. Shoots poked up through the black soil like small rebellions. One night, Elias handed me a ring. Silver, shaped like the spur he'd given her that first year. "No stone, just wait. You don't need to wear it," he said, but I needed to give it. Me turned it in her fingers. "I'll wear it," she said, "but not as a wife." He raised an eyebrow. "As a partner," she said, "as someone who didn't just survive this place, someone who made it answer." He smiled, and it wasn't bitter. In the fall, they took in 2 more girls, orphans from down river, left after their mother died from fever. Me didn't ask questions. She showed them where the blankets were, let them name the animals. And at night, when the wind creaked the windows and the coyotes sang, Me stood at the porch with her rifle and her stories. She no longer dreamed of blood, she dreamed of fences holding, of small hands pulling up carrots, of laughter inside walls that used to echo with ghosts. She'd come to this place looking for nothing but escape. What she found was a crucible. A fire that hadn't burned her away, but burned her clean, and what remained was sharper, stronger, and unwilling to be buried. Me never returned to the city. Her name faded from the legal ledgers and the gossip pages. But in the land where the wind speaks low and the sun cuts clean, she became something harder to erase. A reckoning. A woman who rose not from love, but from the ash of her own ruin, and built, with calloused hands and steady heart, a life no man could take.